Now introducing the Minor Wisdom Trio! Minor Wisdom!
I've gotten a golden goose, one of the many golden gooses, one of the many golden geese that a lot of people have asked for. Larry Carpenter joined me for a chat a few weeks ago now, and this one had to be over FaceTime. This was my fault because Xfinity sucks. If you have Xfinity, you get random outages. There it is. Speaking of outages, but you get random outages, and it sucks, especially when you work from home. And my wife works from home 24/7, or her normal job is 8 hours a day, works from home. And with my job with Covenant, I work from home on occasion. So far, I haven't been affected by any outages, but my wife is all the time. And this one happened to be a biggie the day that I interviewed Larry Carpenter. And so we did it over FaceTime, so that's why it sounds a little different. And it is what it is. It's nobody's fault. But he was ready to go, and I just said, hey, man, I don't have internet, so we're doing this over the 5G. So that's what we did. The interview was fun, man. I didn't really know Larry Carpenter. Again, I always say that now that I know these people, I don't really, I know them as well as you know them because of this podcast sometimes, but I do have this sort of connection with them now where, and I typically say at the end when we're done recording, hey, make sure you come shake my hand if we've never met in person. I've met Larry in person. We just have never chatted this long, right? And that's part of the selfish side of me doing this podcast. Speaking of doing the podcast, I finally bit the bullet and I opened a Patreon. I've already got one patron on Patreon, and that's cool. And I'm going to release stuff ad-free on there on one level. And with this playwright series, I'm going to release the playwright series on there as well, and then eventually release those pods later on. Maybe when it's too late for you, but at least you'll get to know them. But I'm going to release those playwright series. I've already put one up there on Patreon, one interview. So there are two up there now. I'm going to put this Larry Carpenter one up there right when I get done recording this intro. But join the Patreon. I'm going to put the link in the bio. I'm going to put the link to buy a shirt. There are not just Minor Wisdom shirts on there. Some of you might have seen online, I believe it was Melissa Stuff that had her I Am a Theater Teacher shirt, and I'm happy to keep selling those to you all to help keep this podcast rolling. So yeah, happy to do that. So join the Patreon, please. I just got home from a 7-year-old's birthday party, and it was an pretty much all girl birthday party except for 2 boys. The funny thing is almost all the girls brought their dads, so that was kind of cute. I don't want to say dreading going, but it was a 3-hour 7-year-old birthday party, and it ended up being a quick 3 hours. It was a lot of fun. It was at the schoolhouse. Everybody swam except for the adults. But there was a kid there that I saw this hat he was wearing, and it was the Little League World Series hat. And so I said, hey, man, were you on that Needville team? And he was like, I was, yes, sir. And it was this kid that was in the Little League World Series on the Needville team. I was like, am I supposed to get his autograph? Am I supposed to ask a 12-year-old? A, why is a 12-year-old at a 7-year-old's party? I think it was a family friend. I don't know. I didn't ask. But B, do I ask a 12-year-old for their autograph? I mean, he could go on to be something. I mean, what happens in 10 years if I see him on my TV and I'm like, well, gosh darny, I could have gotten his autograph when he was 12. Well, it turns out, fast forward like a few minutes later, and he ended up hitting my daughter with some stick in the stomach. So now if we see that guy in 10 years, that kid who will be a man in 10 years, if we see him in 10 years, I can be like, that's the guy, Eleanor, who will be 17 at the time, that's the guy who hurt your stomach. That's cool, right? And she's over it. She's fine. But that's pretty neat, right? Hope everybody had a good Labor Day weekend. Labor Day. We've got student loans on the horizon, and I'm not going to lie, my wife and I are starting to panic a bit because that's a lot of money that we have to pay every month for the next, let's see, we figured we're going to be done with our loans when Ava is a senior in high school. I'm done November of her senior year. So yeah, that's a lot of money. So I'm not going to lie. I've started hustling myself to do more shows, to get paid. And picking up things here and there so that we're not freaking out about, an extra hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month. So if this is a little bit of a shilling of myself. If you want to hire me, I'll do lights, sound, scenery, shoot for the right price. I'll do costumes, props. I don't think they're going to be good, but I'll do them. But yeah, man, I'll even drive to you and stay in your town for a little bit if you want to pay me enough to do it. So happy to do it. Call me privately. Don't call Covenant. I mean, Covenant can come out and service your stuff, but they're not going to design, and that's okay. That's okay. Side gigs, you know what I'm saying? I might even take up a Sunday church gig. Yikes. That's what loans are making me do. Find Jesus. Enough of that. Let's chat with Larry Carpenter. This is a really good interview. It is episode 210. There's no meaning behind 210, but for me, it's a nice round number, which is why I'm putting Larry here first. He did get an interview after quite a few people have already been interviewed. Up on the horizon, we've got Chase Owen. We've got two Cody interviews. Got Rhonda Reed Roberts. We've got quite a few people coming up, so I'm excited about Brianna. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I've done a lot of interviews. TXCTA on the horizon. I'm glad to be able to see some of you there. Not all of you. Looking at you, Bobby. Enjoy this interview.
My journey into education has really been a crooked path, honestly, and more crooked than that, I guess, is my journey through theater education and fine arts education in general. So I'll try to keep it short and sweet and to the point. But basically, I got my foot in the door with theater in high school, and as many of us do. And we were a small little 1A/2A. We would fluctuate between those two conferences growing up, and all we really had was one-act play. And so my science teacher was actually my one-act play director. And she got me in as a freshman, and I was hooked. And so I loved theater, but at that point in my life, it was, I only knew one act. And it was much more of a hobby, and I didn't know everything else that was out there at that point in time. So then, I graduated and went off to Texas Tech, and I was just guns a-blazing to becoming a broadcast journalist, and with a minor in political science. I was going to go to law school, and I was going to get into politics. That was my path, man. That was it. I had done informative speaking and prose interp in high school, and it just was a natural thing for me. And I liked the political atmosphere, especially at that time. And that was my journey. That's where I was going, And while I was in undergrad, I had decided, I've got to take some of these humanities and other classes and things. And so I'm like, well, I like theater, so why not take some theater classes? And I got the bug again, and being up at Tech, there were just some great people. Dr. George Sorensen, of course, was great. Just such an excellent mentor, and just how brilliant he was. But a lot of the master students are the ones who, touched my classes most specifically. And I got into a class with a gentleman, and his name escapes me right now. But Tech was doing a Festival Whorehouse in Texas. And having grown up in Baylor country, that was just not a thing, right? Festival Whorehouse, yeah, we've heard of it, but you can't do that. So he happened to be playing the sheriff. And so, of course, all the table work they had done and the research and everything that he brought to our little theater appreciation class, it was just intriguing. And I'm like, wow, there's this much depth to this, and I've missed out. I need more, And so, of course, getting to witness all of that kind of almost firsthand was really awesome, and took me into some more classes while I worked on that broadcast degree, and still heading to law school at this point. But I got to work with Victoria Spangler, who's been a professor out at Hardin Simmons. I don't know if she's retired yet. Last I looked, she was still there, but she took me to a different level with my theater education, and really entrusted me with some deeper roles and parts and things, and I was like, wow, okay, I really like this. But at that point, it was kind of like, I'm too far along and I don't want to turn back now. So I continued taking classes and things, and I double minored with the political science, and then the theater. I just kept taking theater classes. I could. The only thing I really didn't get to take were like all the classes where there were labs, all the tech stuff, so lighting and building and that kind of and design. Anyway, so yeah, graduate. Still got that law school in my mind, but I needed to work for a little bit, and so looking for journalism jobs, and in 1992, December of 1992, those were hard to come by. Just the climate at the time, especially coming back to a little bit more conservative area here. And so I did land a print newspaper job, but it was just more of a freelance gig. And so I needed to supplement the pay. The student loans were about to kick in. And so I went back to substituting, or I started substituting at my old high school, my old school district. And a couple of years of doing that and some other gigs and things. But the long and short of it is that is what led me into education, because the elementary principal, who had been a principal when I graduated, she came over for a meeting with the other high school administrators and things. And she says, "Larry Carpenter, why aren't you teaching?" Man, I'm like, well, because I'm, this, that, the other thing. She's like, "No, as much as you poured into your own personal education growing up and then into college, you need to be teaching." And I don't think it was until the figurative slap across the face that it jarred in my brain, like, why am I fighting this? But I thought all was lost. At that particular point, alternative certification programs were not plentiful. And there wasn't, the high teacher need like there is now. And I was like, I don't even know where to start. She says, your Region Service Center, Region 12 here in Waco, they have a new alt cert program. And here's the phone number. Call them right now. So I'm like, okay. So I picked up the phone call, got into their program. And at that particular time, the only thing I was eligible to get certified in was elementary. And I'm like, I don't know about teaching elementary, but if it's my foot in the door, because by this time my mind has shifted to, I want to get to high school. If I'm going to do this education thing, I want to get to high school. I want to do one-act play. I want to teach theater. And so I got my certification, and I picked up a gig out of a small little school out in Hill County called Penelope. I don't know if you've heard of Penelope or not, but Billy Dragoo and I talk a lot about Penelope because they're still one of the most state appearing schools, or they were for a long time. And he's like, "Man, you taught at Penelope?" I'm like, "Yeah." But I was teaching elementary. And so I wasn't the official one play director or anything. And I just got on the bandwagon because they were doing some amazing work, and supported them all the way up to region that year, and got to, see a lot of good stuff along the way, witness a lot of good things. But again, we're just talking one-act play. Didn't have everything else to choose from. But the next year, the man who had assisted Gloria Walton, who's phenomenal, was great to learn from. he left, and she's like, "You want to help me?" And I'm like, "I would love to," And boy, you talk about taking that bug to the next level. we got so engaged that year, and it was just awesome. The group of kids we had were phenomenal. We typically did comedies, and were successful with those. And we happened to do a little thing called Dearly Departed that year, and it was early on in its release. Maybe second year, I think we'd seen it. Actually, no, not Gerald, Jewett Leon was doing it that exact same year, but they were in a different conference. And Sandra over there, Sandra Mullen, she had a totally different take than we did, and hers was hilarious. But lo and behold, it got us all the way to Austin. And I told the kids going into region, because we knew we were up against a tough fight. We were coming across Overton, who at that time was repeat offenders, and I mean that in the best sense of the word. And then some other East Texas schools that had just had been going to state. I told the kids, you get us to state. You just get us to Austin, and I'll let you shave my hair. And at that time, I had a lot more hair than what I do now. And, I'll have to say it's a little vanity, a little bit of vanity there. And sure enough, they called our name, and we're going Austin. And so it was, that elation, that fun and everything, it was incredible. Little did I know where that was going to skyrocket me. So I got my head shaved, and I met some folks that worked here in Waco ISD, and Baylor had opened their new lab school, and it was an elementary as well. And there was some interest in me coming to the lab school, and I interviewed, and I was bald while I was interviewing. And so getting to explain why I was bald and stuff, I think helped my cause a little bit. And I hated leaving the program there at Penelope, because we were doing great things, and I love teaching out there, and still connected to a lot of those families 30 years later. But my long-term goal at this point now has become a high school theater director. So I thought this might be a good stepping point. So came there, and then my first year, I'm like, we really need to do some theater. And so the GT specialist, myself, my team partner, and our music specialist, we went to our principal and we said, hey, we want to do some theater for these kiddos. And he's like, that theater stuff, it never makes money. I'll spend more money than we'll make, and blah, blah, blah. It was all about the bottom line. But he was also very kid-centric and willing to try something new and different. And so we each had enough of a spoke in the wheel, so to speak, to bring to the table. And we had kids, these were third, fourth, and fifth graders. It was a multi-age classroom setting. We had kids who were writing an original script. And while they were working on scripts, others of us were working on set design and set pieces and things, basic flats and all of that. And then, of course, the music teacher was teaching some music. And then we tied all those pieces together, and we started a program called Showtime. And that was 1996. And that program still exists in its modern iteration today. And it's really cool looking back on my career. I've just started year 30, and seeing something that I helped start is still in existence to this day. And oddly enough, getting to be the director of fine arts, where that school is in the district. And so getting to see it from a totally different angle. Anyway, so while there, worked on my master's and all of that, but I wasn't ready to get into administration. I moved, made some connections, and I was able to get a high school job out at China Spring, which is a suburb here in Waco. And that opened my doors for high school directing. And we had nothing but a cafetorium at that time, and had a good crew of kiddos, and picked a good story for my kids. And we wound up making it all the way to region that year. And it's the first time in a handful of years that they'd only been to region one other time in the modern history of the world. And that really started some talking amongst theater, choir, band that, we really need a facility. If we're going to have these kinds of successes, because our band was rocking, our choir was rocking, we need to have some facilities. And sure enough, the school board and the superintendent felt strongly enough that we're going to take out a bond. We're going to go for a bond, and the voters were behind us. And so they started construction of the new building, everything while I was still teaching. We were successful. We would advance regularly. And 4 years in, I kind of got the bug to be at a larger school district. And so I kind of got the bug to come back to Waco ISD. Well, that happened to be the same year that the new facility was opening. And so, sorry, I told you my journey was a crooked one.
No, that's good. It's good. No, keep going.
And so it was stay for the new building and keep going with what we're going with, or have I built it strong enough that they can survive and I can go help build somewhere else. And ultimately I came back to Waco, and I was teaching at University High School, and it was a 4A, upper size 4A when I first came back, and we moved into 5A while I was there. And, we modicum of success, but again, cafetorium stage, the lighting panel that we had, the controls, when you moved the levers, there were literally sparks that flew out from underneath the unit. So we were like, this is just not working. Moved into administration there after a few years, and through a line of folks, we wound up getting Glenn Price. That's a familiar name to some of your listeners, I'm sure. Glenn had actually been at a competitive school district as a student when I was at China Spring as a director. And he tells the story that we hated you, Larry Carpenter. We hated you because I don't know. I don't think I was, came across crass or rude or anything, but there were times where we had advanced and they didn't. And I don't know, he's like, but I see it's different now. I see it's different. So I brought him on, and Kendra Willoughby, that's another name. She's down there in Houston area at Foster, and she had come in, and after I went out of the classroom, she started in taking the kids to a different level, and then Glenn came on board, and man, it was just fun watching them grow, and to the point that the school district went out for a bond to build a whole new school with a performing arts facility, and bond passes. Building gets built. Building's going to open in the fall of 2011, and I get named principal at my old elementary school where I taught in Waco at Baylor's Lab School. And so I didn't get to work in the new building there either. And then I was principal in my old school. And again, the Showtime project was still going strong. Then moved into central administration after 2 years and worked with advanced academics. And then Philip Morgan, who was my immediate predecessor, he zigzagged around and took a job down at Goose Creek. And that same night, both of us had the same boss. She called me up and said, "Hey, Philip's going to be leaving us, and I know fine arts is your world. Do you want to consider the fine arts director job?" And I moved into that role in fall of 2015, and I've been in it ever since. And it's just awesome to be in a position not only to support the world of theater, but all the music programs and the visual arts and even the drill team. Just having a hand in all of that now. And here we are, starting year 30, and that's all just the teaching journey. But I'm going to take a breath and let you get a word in.
Hey, the people have heard enough from me after 200 plus episodes. So, well, that's fun. There were a couple things I already kind of knew about you, cause I have a really great research team. It's, of one, but, you said you were a principal for 2 years. I did not know that you were an elementary school principal for 2 years.
Yep.
So I have an administrative certification as well, with that came with my master's.
Right.
But when I was interning at the high school level, and didn't go into administration because, to be completely frank, high school administrators deal with issues more than they get to deal with kind of the fun things, right? Yeah, they get to go to football games and athletic events and fine arts events and things, and those are fun. But even those you're on duty, right? It's like, if you're only there if there's a problem. And so, as an elementary school principal, I hear, yes, you are there for some discipline things, but it's also, from what I understand, it's just a little more fun to be an elementary school principal. So what were some of the kind of like fun moments or things that maybe you didn't realize were going to be so joyous in that, in that part of your career?
I'll tell you, man, having been an elementary teacher for some of my career, I know the kids are loving and that kind of thing, but I taught mostly upper elementary and didn't really deal much with like pre-K through second grade. And being in a position where you got to see all of those kids on a regular basis, the love and the passion those kids had walking in that building every day. I mean, it made it easy to get up and go and do your job, and then the other allure, honestly, for me was being able to go back to a campus where I'd actually worked as an educator.
Yeah.
And still seeing, like I said, the theater program there that we had started still going strong. And some of the teachers I worked alongside, I was now their supervisor. And, that brings some unique challenges in and of itself, but it really gave us the opportunity, I think, to propel the mission of the school forward.
Yeah.
I was only there a short time, but it really gave me a different sense of things, because I had been as an assistant principal there for a while at the high school. And like you said, buses, books, and butts is the old phrase. And we had a good crew and things, fellow administrators, but being the one in charge, and I use that term loosely because I'm just not that kind of a leader. I'm very much a collaborative leader, or I try to be, and working alongside such passionate educators, and then having a phenomenal family group and a community group, and then having the extra piece of Baylor University and what that brought to the table. Man, it just, like I say, just the love and care and just good, honest living that was in that building. And, I don't want people to think, well, they had Baylor, well, so it was, it was just gravy. But no, we had kids from all over the entire district,
right.
And it's a magnet school campus. And so, that was another unique situation, that I got to see kids from all over the district, and they wanted to learn. Kids came in with love in their hearts and learning on their minds. And, we just tried our best to give them the best we could each and every day.
Yeah.
I worked alongside some really excellent teachers there.
Yeah. Yeah. I shared this story. I don't know when this version of the story is going to go out, but I shared it with somebody else I interviewed, and I don't remember who. It's been a couple weeks, but when my daughters started school this year, there was a clear night and day of the elementary world and now my oldest in middle school, with one adult out there, moving cars along, whereas elementary school, it was like the entire faculty is out, and they know my daughter by name, and it's like they're wearing streamers, and, it's just like it's just more fun. I mean, they really make it, I guess when you are that age, you have to think that education is fun. It's, that this is a place to be. And so whoever is, I know each school is different, but whoever is at my daughter's school is doing a really good job of making sure that's an environment. It sounds like you kind of, as the collaborative leader, would kind of did the same thing. So
yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go.
It's being a long time educator and having worked in so many different facets of the business and the profession. It was a little shocking to me, honestly, when I came from those initial 6 years of elementary teaching into the high school world, that we didn't do it the same way. Like, school should be fun. It should be fun all the way up. And, I think that's what's always kind of drawn me back to the fine arts world, because, athletics and fine arts are the two biggest reasons why kids continue to come to school. And, we get them hooked in. Of course, they need to remain eligible so they can compete in the various things and be part of all the fun stuff. And so, they'll work to get their other classes and things done. And I don't know, I guess I've just always approached teaching from day one. This needs to be a fun and engaging, rich atmosphere. And it's my job. I mean, that's my job to give that opportunity out to my kids. Funnily enough, I was at a school board meeting tonight, but I had done some work today where I had to use some Sharpies. And I was noticing while I was sitting at the meeting before we got started, I had Sharpie marks all over my hands. And I'm like, this takes me back. I mean, it takes me back to like when I would go home and I had Visa-V marker all over me. Yeah, my clothes, my tie, my shirt, everything. I'm like, man, I worked hard today.
Yeah.
And that sounds like all I did was work teach or something. But you were wearing your stripes, so to speak. And that always felt like an excellent day. Yeah. When you could go home and you're like, man, I'm wearing my stripes. I worked for my kids today. That's what it's all about. I mean, if you're in education for anything other than the kids, then I would say welcome out.
Yeah.
Come on out.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing anybody good. You're not doing any good for yourself. You're definitely not doing any good for your kids.
I remember my mom taught sixth grade math in the 70s, 80s, and early part of the 90s, and always had an overhead projector and had those same marks on her hands. And, sometimes it would fall into her lap. And so she'd have a little mark on her, on her pants or dress or whatever. So yeah, that's pretty funny that you say that, but keeping on that elementary train for a little bit, just selfishly asking, because I've just now started teaching an acting class for 4th through 8th graders, and it's pretty much 4th and 5th graders. There's not a lot of anything else. And we're taking on the task of writing a script, and they're going to perform this script in 10 weeks. But I've never done that before. So I know you probably have lots of tips and tricks.
You want the kids to have the ownership, right? And you want them to feel like this is 100%, we did this. And that's a really good age that you've got there. I will say, as the adults of the group, we would typically get together and brainstorm just kind of some ideas and thoughts, and in brainstorming sessions then with the kids, kind of, hey, what about? Have you thought about this? Or what do you think about this? Or that kind of thing. And so there would maybe be a just kind of a general idea in the adults' heads, and kind of help guide the children, in that direction a little bit. Something that always worked well for us, we wrote original scripts, but there was typically some literary document that we tied in as well. So whether it was, a book or a play or screenplay or anything like that, so just places for the kids to have jumping off points.
Okay.
Really good brainstorming sessions, guide those questions to where you think might be feasible, to get to.
Yeah.
storyboard and or outlining those kinds of things, and then just start breaking it down. And you have the kids. We would have the kids pair up or trio up, just depending on how many groups were together that day, and they would brainstorm together and work on you're in charge of scene 3 and you've got 4, whatever. And so we might have all this, what seemingly is this non-continuity, but then that finesse then is where we would come in and
right.
fine tune at the end. But ultimately, as long as we knew where the kids knew where we were trying to get to, then they could get us there.
Right.
And it took a little patience in the beginning for sure. And but we kind of, it kind of became a thing, like the whole school would get involved to help on show nights and things. And then as we were developing the script and all, the kids would be so excited about what they were doing, and they would get their younger siblings like, when I get to be, I'm going to get to do that, and that kind of thing. So as with any program or any opportunity or whatever, once you've kindled the flames and started that fire, it tends to spread. And I only mean that in a good sense.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I know we're a little dry out there right now. So
yeah. It's, hyperbole. I do it all the time. Mm-hmm. So you, kind of working a little backwards, I guess, but, you mentioned that you weren't able to take those tech classes at Tech, right? The lab style classes. So as far as Tech theater, not Texas Tech, as far as Tech theater was concerned, like over the years, what did you end up kind of becoming proficient at? Did you become proficient at anything Tech, or, and then kind of how did you end up doing that? What was your way of, was it, not to keep bringing up fire, but was it just like putting your feet to the fire type thing, or,
some of that? Yeah. Some of that. I honestly had finally found another theater family, if you will, in our community theater. And we were very fortunate that while I was involved with them as an actor primarily, we had an excellent tech director. And so I learned a lot of what I needed for tech by working with Terry. And man, he was just good. And everything from, like I say, building flats and simple, what is now to me simple stuff like that, to texturing walls and creating illusions with light and those kinds of things. He just was phenomenal. So I picked up a lot of tips that way. And then once I was able to get actually in the classroom, went to a lot of professional development, specific to the tech world. I'm like, I kind of had a good grasp on the acting world. I needed to shore up my tech stuff and my theater history stuff too, to be honest with you. But that's kind of how I did that. And those things are still paying off to this day, because I can work around my house, and I'm like, I learned that too.
Yeah. I always tell my sister, and I've said this before too, but she'll ask me to do something around her house, and I'll be like, you got to understand, I was trained to build things to last for weeks, not forever. So, if this falls apart on you after a couple months, I warned you. Yeah. So
exactly.
Yeah. So real quick, did the head shaving thing become a tradition at all, or what? Okay. Was it just a one and done? Yeah.
It was a one and done. I was younger and foolish.
Yeah.
By the time we got around to that again, I was like, I'm not going to offer that.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, I never came back around to it, man.
Yeah. It's the hair dyeing thing. People bleach their hair now. Like that seems to be a popular thing, a team thing, I guess. Couple more things, and then I have two kind of fun questions, and I'll get you out of here. You mentioned the journalism side of you. Uh-huh. So my father was in radio, so I completely understand the struggle of not being able to find a job in journalism. Was there something kind of specific? You mentioned the newspaper side. When you said it, maybe I'm hearing things, but it didn't sound like that was the goal. What was when you say the journalism side, what was the goal? Was it television, radio? Was it TV, or I mean, newspaper? Was it magazines at the time? What was it for you?
Yeah. It was going to, I wanted to be, until I decided to do the law school thing. I wanted to work on a TV station, either as an anchor or reporter or something like that. Again, because I had what I thought were excellent aspirations to get into politics, and thank goodness that I went down a different path, especially looking back on things. So I wanted to really dig into maybe like political reporting, those kinds of things. And you have to start small scale a lot of times. And I had done a lot of internships and things and thought I'd made some really good connections. But again, there were just some environmental, environmental pieces that prevented me from being able to launch into that. And so, like I say, that the newspaper gig came up, but it was a freelance gig, and I got paid by the story.
Yeah.
And it was and it was fine. I mean, it was still journalism, so I was like, okay, this is still good. But because I was doing more of what we call the fluff pieces or the feature stories, and it was in a smaller community, when schools let out for the summer, a lot of the stories died out too. Right. Because the full-time reporters, or even the staff reporters, they got a lot of the stories first.
Right.
And then the freelancers got whatever was left.
Right.
And, so it was just going to be, honestly, a stepping stone.
Right.
I was looking to do that for maybe 2-3 years. And then by that point, be established in whatever community I was living in and start the political journey.
Right.
Or head back to law school. And,
Was there a particular event that made you go towards politics at the time, or a person, or Henry Kissinger? Was it Henry Kissinger? You can just say it.
No, it was not. It wasn't Henry. It wasn't Henry Kissinger. No, not. I can't say it's one person.
Yeah.
I think I had just always been kind of coming back around to the principle that had encouraged me to get certified to begin with. Right. I got into student government when I was in high school.
Gotcha.
And then I was in student council, and student council led to some, regional type places in positions. And then some of the organizations I was in, I'd ran for some region and state offices there. And so it kind of became part of the system, I guess. And it felt right, and it felt good. And I've always been kind of a person who wants to give back and give of myself. And I thought, what better place to do that than, in some political position somewhere. I never had aspirations like making it all the way to president or anything like that, but, just something at the local, possibly state level, at one point in time. Then I don't know, man, like I say, the road just took a real sharp left, and, and here I am, know, and that's okay. And I'm glad. I mean, it was the journey I should have been on to begin with, but just didn't know it at the time.
You do not need to comment on this. I don't want you to comment on this, but I will say getting into central admin is eerily similar to getting into politics. You don't need to say a thing. So the next question, you mentioned that your science teacher was, or the science teacher was the one-act play teacher. That is, I've done a few hundred of these now. That's the first time I've interviewed a lot of people that came from 1A and 2A in the smaller schools that had an English teacher, which makes quote unquote sense, right? I don't mean to diminish a science teacher, but normally you don't hear about science teachers being the one that the principal goes to and says, "Hey, do you want to direct?" So, what was it? Why the science teacher at the time? Do you even know their background, or?
Yeah, I do actually. Miss Wilson, Shirley Wilson. She's still with us. And her background, honestly, she had lived out in California when she was younger, and she'd actually been on the Lawrence Welk show as like one of the dancers and singers and stuff.
Okay.
And so it was like, nuh-uh, you know. And of course, it was a lot harder then to come across copies and film of that and stuff. But now, I mean, you can find her. I'm like, that's Miss Wilson, man. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But our English teacher was just, she's like, I had done the one act thing, ready to just really be in the classroom, raise my child, and have my family and stuff. And Miss Wilson stepped up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a little theater in my life, a little TV. I'll try it.
That's funny. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's a good story. So I'm going to get you out of here on these last two kind of fun questions, and you can elaborate. You don't have to just answer with one word, but you mentioned you got the acting thing. You kind of knew your way around. You did community theater. What has been to this point your favorite role that you've played?
I'm glad you asked me that, honestly, because I thought this might come up. I've gotten the fortune of being able to play this role twice, and I know the play itself may be a little more difficult to produce without proper education going into it. But we did The Foreigner, and I got to play Charlie Baker, the lead. I got to play The Foreigner, and I fortunately, both times I did the show, had directors who just kind of let me go.
Yeah.
And so when we got to the point of Charlie taking down the antagonists and everything, it was wild and it was fun, and I was sweating and drenched and bug-eyed and just, Charlie lost his stuff every night. Yeah. It was great. And, man, I was never in better shape because that role really took a lot out of me physically. And it was fun.
Yeah.
And I love the meat of that story. And everybody thinks, it's called The Foreigner, and everybody thinks it's really about Charlie, but it's really about Betty's journey, the old lady character. And when you look at it from that point of view, it really brings a different twist to that show. Right. That's fun, man. And I got to do it twice. Now I'm way too old for that character, but golly, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it again.
How far in between did you play him? Like how many years?
Oh gosh. It was about 10 years, I guess. Okay. 9 to 10 years. Yeah. It really originally was, the first time I got to do it was not on the slate for the season because it was the 50th anniversary season of our community theater. And so they were doing, favorites from the past. Sure. Or whatever. And something happened with getting the rights to the show they were going to end the season with. And so they're like, well, we've heard about this show, and the executive director at the time was like, I've actually had the opportunity of having directed this before. And I'm like, well, interestingly enough, so have I at that point. And so, and honestly, another thing, I'd always kind of played older roles. I guess maybe just my energy, how I came off to all of my directors and stuff. But getting to play, such the journey that Charlie goes on, and being in good hands with the two directors I worked with, both came at it a little differently, but like I say, they just let me go. Yeah. And when we tell our kids about, keep pushing, and if you go too far out, we'll pull you back. That's what we aim for. Just every night during rehearsals and things. And the audience, there's people to this day, and I don't know, it makes me turn a little red to think about, but there's people in this community to this day that will come and go, I remember when you played that little foreign guy, or whatever. And I'm like, that was a while back now. But, and I'm like, how do you remember that? Oh, it was just so much fun. We had so much fun. We came to the theater that night. And, whether we're doing dramas or comedies or classical or period piece, whatever, if we do our jobs as actors and directors and crew, and the audience enjoys what they come to see and gets to go on a journey with you for, hour and a half to 3 hours sometimes 4, not anymore, but you know what I mean? then we've done our job. And those are the things that stick with you. And so I think that's why getting to play Charlie Baker in The Foreigner sticks with me. We had fun every night, and the audience did too.
Minor Wisdom.